At 46 years old, I thought my life was over. I had no money, no hope, and no one who believed in me anymore. But then SHE walked into my life, a 24-year-old millionaire, and changed everything. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button because today's story is one you won't want to miss. It's a tale of desperation, resilience, and an unlikely partnership that turned into something no one saw coming. By the end of this video, you'll learn how two people from completely different worlds came together, not just to build a business but to rewrite their lives in ways neither of them expected. Let me take you back to where it all began. At 46, I felt like society had already written me off. You know that feeling when birthdays start to feel less like celebrations and more like reminders? That was me. Every year felt heavier than the last. My savings were gone, my confidence was shattered, and honestly, I didn't even recognize myself anymore. Friends stopped calling, family avoided talking about sensitive topics, and strangers looked at me like I was invisible. Society has this cruel way of making you believe that by your mid-40s, if you haven't figured it out yet, you never will, but here's the thing, they were wrong. Dead wrong. Because sometimes, when you think there's nothing left for you, life throws you a curveball so unexpected, it changes everything. And for me, that curveball came in the form of a young woman named Ava. Ava was 24, confident, successful, and radiating energy. She had her own company, a thriving social circle, and a bank account most people could only dream of. When we first met, I couldn't help but wonder what someone like her would ever see in someone like me. We were worlds apart, not just in age, but in experience, lifestyle, and outlook on life. Yet, somehow, we clicked. What started as a simple business deal quickly spiraled into something far deeper and more complex than either of us anticipated. This wasn't just about building a brand or chasing profits. It became a journey of self-discovery, trust, and ultimately, love. Now, before you jump to conclusions or assume you know where this story is headed, let me tell you, it's not what you think. Yes, there's romance, but it's layered with challenges, misunderstandings, and moments that will leave you questioning whether we made the right choices. Be wise sticking around until the end. You'll hear the full story, how a broken-down 46-year-old and a fearless 24-year-old defied odds, silenced critics, and proved that age truly is just a number. You'll also discover some surprising lessons along the way, things I never imagined learning at this stage of my life. So grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and stay with me for the next few minutes. Trust me, this isn't just another feel-good story, it's raw, real, and relatable. And who knows? Maybe it'll inspire you to rethink what's possible in your own life. Before we dive deeper, thank you so much for being here. Your support means the world to me, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future stories like this one. Now, let's get into it. This is the moment where everything changed. Let me take you back to the days before Ava entered my life. Back then, I was a shadow of the person I used to be, broken, defeated, and drowning in regret. If you've ever felt like the world has turned its back on you, trust me, I know exactly how that feels. What led me here wasn't one big disaster, it was a series of small, crushing blows that eventually piled up too high for me to climb out of. It all started with my job, or rather, the loss of it. For over 2 decades, I worked tirelessly in corporate sales, climbing the ladder, playing by the rules, and believing the lie that hard work always pays off. But when the company downsized, they didn't care about loyalty or experience. They cared about cutting costs, and people like me were expendable. At 44, I found myself unemployed for the first time in my adult life. Desperation pushed me to make some terrible decisions. I poured what little savings I had into get-rich-quick schemes, real estate flips, online businesses, anything that promised quick returns. Spoiler alert, none of them worked. Instead, I lost almost everything. My house went into foreclosure, my car was repossessed, and I ended up moving into a tiny studio apartment that smelled like mildew no matter how much air freshener I sprayed. Life became a constant battle just to survive. Breakfast? A cup of instant coffee, if I even had milk left. Lunch? Whatever stale bread I could scrape together. Dinner? Sometimes nothing at all. I sold furniture piece by piece, first the dining table, then the bookshelf, then the couch. By the end, I barely had enough left to sit on, but worse than the hunger or the financial strain was the loneliness. Friends stopped calling because I had nothing to offer anymore, not even decent conversation. Family gatherings became awkward affairs where everyone avoided eye contact, pretending not to notice how far I'd fallen. People whispered behind my back, saying things like, "She should have planned better," or "This is what happens when you don't have a backup plan." Society doesn't forgive failure, especially not at 46. There's this unspoken rule that by your mid-40s, you're supposed to have it all figured out, a stable career, financial security, maybe even a family. When you don't meet those expectations, people treat you differently. Like you're damaged goods. Like you'll never recover. And honestly, after a while, I started believing them. There were nights when I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if there was any point in trying anymore. Was I fighting for a future that didn't exist? Would anyone even care if I gave up? Those thoughts haunted me more than the empty fridge or the mounting bills. Then, one day, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic or earth-shattering, at least, not at first. It happened during a networking event hosted by a local entrepreneur group. I hadn't wanted to go. In fact, I only showed up because a former colleague guilt-tripped me into attending. "You never know who you might meet," she said. Easy for her to say, she still had a thriving business and a six-figure salary. The room was buzzing with energy, young professionals swapping business cards, startup founders pitching ideas, and investors sipping champagne while nodding approvingly. I felt completely out of place in my thrift store blazer and scuffed shoes. Everyone seemed so polished, so confident. Meanwhile, I couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't belong there. That's when I saw her. Ava stood near the refreshment table, laughing with a group of people. She wore a sleek navy dress that screamed success, and her presence commanded attention without her having to try. Even from across the room, I could tell she was different, sharp, ambitious, magnetic. I told myself not to approach her. Why would someone like her want to talk to someone like me? But fate, or maybe sheer desperation, had other plans. Our paths crossed when we both reached for the last bottle of sparkling water. "Looks like we're down to the dregs," she joked, flashing a warm smile. For a moment, I forgot how to speak. Her voice was light, playful, but there was an intelligence behind her eyes that caught me off guard. We struck up a conversation, and to my surprise, she actually listened when I spoke. Not the polite nod and smile kind of listening, but genuine interest. She asked questions, shared insights, and treated me like an equal, even though I clearly wasn't. By the time the event ended, we'd exchanged numbers and agreed to meet again to discuss a potential collaboration. As I walked home that night, because, let's be real, I couldn't afford an Uber, I replayed our conversation in my head. She didn't seem like someone who'd give me a second glance, but fate had other plans. Little did I know, that chance encounter would set off a chain reaction neither of us could have predicted. Let me tell you about Ava. From the moment she walked into my life, she was impossible to ignore. She carried herself with this quiet confidence that didn't need loud declarations or flashy gestures. It simply existed, like a force of nature. At 24, she already had the kind of success most people only dream of. Her company was thriving, her name buzzed around networking circles, and she moved through the world with an ease I hadn't felt in years. But it wasn't just her accomplishments that made her stand out, it was her energy. Ava radiated this youthful vibrancy, this sense that every day held endless possibilities. While I was weighed down by regret and self-doubt, she seemed untouchable, like nothing could shake her faith in herself or her future. And then there was her lifestyle, the sleek apartment downtown, the designer clothes, the ability to drop thousands on business ventures without blinking an eye. It was everything I wasn't: polished, put together, effortless. At first glance, we couldn't have been more different. Here I was, scraping by on instant noodles and second-hand furniture, while she sipped champagne at rooftop parties and flew first class for work trips. The contrast between us wasn't just financial, it was existential. She represented everything I thought I'd never be again: successful, confident, unstoppable. To be honest, I underestimated her at first. How could I not? She was so young, barely old enough to rent a car, and yet here she was running a multi-million-dollar business. In my mind, youth equaled naivety, and I figured she must have gotten lucky somehow. Surely someone her age couldn't possibly understand what it meant to struggle, to fight tooth and nail just to keep your head above water. And as for me? Well, let's just say I didn't exactly project success. My worn-out blazer, tired eyes, and awkward demeanor screamed failure. I assumed she'd write me off as soon as our paths crossed, a washed-up has-been who had no business being in the same room as her. After all, why would someone like Ava waste her time on someone like me? But then came our first real interaction, and everything changed. It started innocently enough, with small talk over that last bottle of sparkling water at the networking event. As we chatted, I braced myself for the inevitable shift in tone, the polite but dismissive smile that said, "Nice meeting you," before moving on to someone more impressive. But instead, she leaned in closer, genuinely curious about what I had to say. "You mentioned working in sales," she asked, tilting her head slightly. "Tell me more about that." I hesitated, unsure where to start. Talking about my past successes felt strange now, almost embarrassing, like bragging about a trophy I'd lost long ago. But something about the way she looked at me, really looked at me, made me want to open up. So I told her about my years in corporate sales, the strategies I'd developed, the clients I'd won over. To my surprise, she didn't just nod politely, she engaged. "That's fascinating," she said, her eyes lighting up. "I've been struggling to scale my client base effectively. Do you think some of those techniques might still apply today?" Her question caught me off guard, not because it was groundbreaking, but because it was genuine. She wasn't humoring me or trying to make me feel better. She actually valued my opinion. As the night went on, our conversation deepened. We talked about challenges, goals, even fears. She admitted she sometimes felt overwhelmed by the pressure to succeed and confessed she often doubted whether she was ready for the responsibilities she'd taken on. Hearing her vulnerability disarmed me completely. For the first time in ages, I didn't feel invisible, I felt seen. By the time we exchanged numbers, I was buzzing with a mix of emotions, excitement, disbelief, and maybe, just maybe, a flicker of attraction. There was something magnetic about Ava, something that drew me in despite the glaring differences between us. Our connection felt natural, easy, like pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. Looking back, I can pinpoint that exact moment as the beginning of everything. What started as a casual exchange of ideas quickly evolved into something neither of us anticipated. That conversation sparked something neither of us could have predicted. The business deal that changed everything started with a simple idea, a spark of inspiration during one of our early meetings. Ava had been struggling to scale her company, which specialized in tech-driven creative ventures. She wanted to expand into experiential marketing, creating immersive events and digital campaigns that blended art, technology, and storytelling. It was bold, ambitious, and exactly the kind of challenge I used to thrive on back when I still believed in myself. When she pitched the concept to me, my first reaction wasn't excitement, it was doubt. "Why would you want someone like me involved?" I asked bluntly. "You have resources, connections, talent, I'm just a has-been." But Ava didn't hesitate. "Because I need someone who knows how to sell," she said firmly. "I can build amazing things, but selling them? That's your superpower." Her confidence in me was disarming. For years, I'd convinced myself I had nothing left to offer, yet here was this young woman telling me I was exactly what she needed. The proposal was straightforward, we'd partner up, combining her vision and capital with my sales expertise and industry knowledge. Together, we'd create something groundbreaking, a fusion of cutting-edge tech and timeless human connection. On paper, it made perfect sense. Her wealth and network gave us access to investors, clients, and opportunities one could only dream of. Meanwhile, my decades of experience brought strategy, credibility, and a gut instinct for what worked in the market. But as much as the partnership seemed logical, it wasn't without its challenges. Almost immediately, skepticism reared its ugly head. Friends and former colleagues raised eyebrows when they heard about our collaboration. A 24-year-old millionaire and a broke 46-year-old? Sounds like a recipe for disaster, one acquaintance joked, not realizing how much those words stung. Even Ava's inner circle questioned her decision. "Are you sure about this?" her mentor reportedly asked. "He doesn't exactly scream reliable." Their doubts echoed in my own mind. Was I using Ava? Or worse, was she using me? Late at night, after long hours of planning and strategizing, I'd lie awake wondering if I was just a pawn in her grand scheme. Did she genuinely value my input, or was I simply a placeholder until she found someone better? And then there was the age gap, the elephant in every room we entered. People whispered behind our backs, speculating about ulterior motives. Some assumed I was trying to leech off her success. Others thought she was indulging in some sort of midlife crisis fantasy by teaming up with someone twice her age. The judgment weighed heavily on both of us, though neither of us admitted it at first. Despite the external noise, something remarkable began to happen. As we dove deeper into the project, spending countless hours brainstorming ideas, troubleshooting problems, and fine-tuning strategies, a bond started forming between us. There were moments of pure synergy, like when we stayed up until 3 a.m., fueled by cold pizza and bad coffee, hashing out campaign details. We'd bounce ideas off each other so quickly it felt like a game of verbal ping-pong, laughter erupting whenever one of us landed a particularly clever point. Other times, the conversations turned more personal. During late-night work sessions, we opened up about our fears and insecurities. Ava confessed she often felt like an imposter, worried people would realize she wasn't as capable as they thought. I shared stories from my darkest days, admitting how close I'd come to giving up entirely. These vulnerable exchanges created a level of trust one hadn't expected. Slowly, the lines between professional and personal began to blur. There were subtle signs too, little moments that hinted at something deeper brewing beneath the surface. Like the time she reached across the table to grab a pen and accidentally brushed my hand, sending a jolt through me I couldn't explain. Or the way she'd look at me during presentations, her eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my chest tighten. Still, I tried to ignore it. This was business, not romance. Right, but no matter how hard I pushed those thoughts aside, they lingered. And I couldn't help but notice Ava seemed different around me too. She smiled more when I walked into the room. She sought out my opinion, even on decisions unrelated to the project. There was a softness in her voice when she spoke to me, a warmth that went beyond mere professionalism. As weeks turned into months, our partnership grew stronger. The business flourished. We landed major clients, secured funding, and launched campaigns that exceeded expectations. But alongside the professional victories, something else was blossoming. Something neither of us had anticipated. Looking back now, I realize the foundation for what came next was laid in those quiet, unguarded moments. The late-night talks, the shared laughter, the lingering glances, they all added up to something undeniable. As our professional relationship grew stronger, so did something else. It's strange how love sneaks up on you. One moment, you're focused on deadlines and profit margins, and the next, you're staring at someone across the room, your heart pounding like a drumroll you can't ignore. For me, that pivotal moment came during one of our late-night brainstorming sessions, a night that started like any other but ended with everything changing. The air in Ava's office was thick with the scent of fresh coffee and the faint hum of rain tapping against the windows. We'd been working for hours, surrounded by sticky notes, half-empty cups, and scattered papers. The clock ticked past midnight, but neither of us seemed to notice. Our conversation had shifted from business strategies to something deeper, dreams we'd abandoned, fears we carried, regrets we couldn't shake. As she spoke about her childhood, the pressure to succeed, the loneliness of being the golden child, her voice softened, almost trembling. I reached out instinctively, placing my hand over hers to offer comfort. But instead of pulling away, she turned her palm upward, intertwining her fingers with mine. Her touch sent a shockwave through me, electric and tender all at once. In that instant, I knew. This wasn't just admiration or gratitude anymore. These weren't feelings born out of convenience or dependency, they were real, raw, and undeniable. My stomach churned as reality hit me. I was falling in love with Ava, but with that realization came a tidal wave of guilt and fear. How could I even entertain these thoughts? She was 24, I was 46. What kind of man lets himself develop feelings for someone so young? Someone who trusted him as a mentor and partner? The age gap alone felt insurmountable, but then there was the power dynamic. Was I taking advantage of her vulnerability? Or worse, was I projecting my own loneliness onto her because she was the first person in years to make me feel alive again? I wrestled with those questions endlessly. Every glance, every smile, every laugh between us became a potential sign, or maybe just wishful thinking. Did she feel the same way, or was I misreading signals? Maybe she saw me as nothing more than a friend, a colleague, an older guy who happened to understand her struggles. The uncertainty gnawed at me, keeping me awake long after the lights went out, and yet, despite the doubts, there were moments when I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes too. Like the time we celebrated securing a major client deal. Over dinner, she raised her glass and said, "To us, two people who refuse to give up." Her gaze lingered on mine just a second too long, and my breath caught in my throat. Was it hope I saw reflected back at me? Or simply the glow of success? The turning point came unexpectedly, on a rainy evening much like the one where I first acknowledged my feelings. We'd left the office late, deciding to grab takeout instead of heading home. Sitting side by side in her car, the windshield wipers swishing rhythmically, the world outside blurred into streaks of silver and gray. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice hesitant but steady. "About us." My heart skipped a beat. "Us?" She nodded, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. "I know this, whatever it is between us, isn't just professional anymore. At least, not for me." Her words hung in the air, heavy and fragile at the same time. I wanted to respond, to tell her I felt the same, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I reached for her hand, holding it gently. "You have no idea how long I've waited to hear you say that," I admitted finally, my voice cracking under the weight of emotion. Tears welled up in her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness, they were relief, joy, validation. "I was scared," she confessed. "Scared you wouldn't feel the same way. Scared people would judge us. Scared I was making a mistake." "We're already judged," I reminded her softly. "People will talk no matter what we do. But does it matter? Not to me, not if it means losing you." That night, we crossed the line we'd both been tiptoeing around for months. It wasn't planned or calculated, it just happened, like breathing. And for the first time in years, I felt holed out of course. The world didn't make it easy for us. When news of our relationship leaked, because of course it did, the backlash was swift and brutal. Social media exploded with opinions, some called it pathetic, others labeled it predatory. Friends questioned her judgment, family members warned me I was ruining my reputation. Even strangers felt entitled to weigh in, dissecting our lives as though they understood anything about who we were or what we meant to each other. For a while, the criticism shook us. There were days when we avoided public places together, afraid of the stares and whispers. Days when doubt crept back in, whispering cruel lies about whether we were strong enough to withstand the storm. But through it all, one truth anchored us: love doesn't care about numbers or labels. We chose each other, not because it was easy, but because it was right. Because in a world that tried to tear us apart, we found solace in each other's arms. Because despite the odds, we believed in the beauty of what we shared. Looking back now, I realize that crossing that line wasn't reckless, it was brave. It forced us to confront our fears, challenge societal norms, and redefine what happiness looked like for us. And while the journey hasn't been perfect, it's been worth every step. Navigating challenges together wasn't something we planned for, it was thrust upon us, like a storm neither of us saw coming. But storms have a way of revealing what's truly strong and resilient. For Ava and me, the challenges came from every direction: external pressures, internal doubts, and the constant battle to prove that our relationship wasn't just some fleeting mistake but a testament to love and ambition coexisting. The criticism hit hard, harder than I ever imagined. At first, it came in whispers from family members who thought they were protecting us. My sister pulled me aside one day, her voice laced with concern. "Are you sure this is healthy?" she asked. "You're old enough to be her father." Ouch. Those words stung more than I let on because deep down, I'd already asked myself the same question countless times. Then there were the friends, the ones who claimed to support us but couldn't resist dropping subtle jabs. "Isn't she a little young for you?" one would say with a forced laugh. "Doesn't it feel weird dating someone closer to your daughter's age?" another chimed in. Each comment chipped away at my confidence, planting seeds of doubt about whether we were making the right choice, but nothing compared to the online backlash. Once word got out about our relationship, and trust me, in today's world, secrets don't stay hidden for long, the trolls descended like vultures. Social media became a minefield of judgmental comments, memes mocking our age gap, and even accusations of exploitation. One particularly nasty post read, "Desperate old guy preys on successful young woman." The cruelty was staggering, and though I tried to ignore it, Ava took it personally. "I worked so hard to build my reputation," she said one night, scrolling through her phone with tears streaming down her face. "And now people think I'm throwing it all away for this." She gestured between us, her frustration palpable. I wanted to tell her everything would be okay, but how could I when I wasn't even sure myself? Was she staying with me out of love, or pity? Did she feel trapped by what we'd started, unable to walk away without losing face? These questions haunted me, especially on days when the weight of public scrutiny felt unbearable. Internally, the age difference gnawed at me too. There were moments when I wondered if I was holding her back. Ava was vibrant, ambitious, full of dreams yet to be realized. Meanwhile, I often felt like a relic from another era, dragging behind me years of failure and regret. Would she grow tired of explaining our relationship to skeptical peers? Would she eventually crave someone closer to her own stage in life, someone who could keep up with her energy and aspirations? Doubt crept in most during quiet moments. Like when we attended networking events together and I noticed younger men glancing her way, their admiration obvious. Or when she talked excitedly about future plans, traveling the world, starting new ventures, and I found myself wondering if I'd still fit into that picture 5 or 10 years down the line. Yet, despite all the noise, both external and internal, we refused to let it tear us apart. Instead, we leaned on each other, finding strength in our shared victories. Together, we achieved milestones that reminded us why we started this journey in the first place. On the business front, our campaigns began earning recognition. We won awards, secured high-profile clients, and expanded into international markets. People who once doubted our partnership suddenly wanted to know our secret. "How do you two make it work?" they'd ask, as if success validated our unconventional dynamic. And maybe it did, for us, proving that our collaboration wasn't just viable but thriving gave us ammunition against the critics. Our personal relationship grew stronger too. Small moments became anchors in the chaos. Like the time we celebrated our 1-year anniversary quietly at home, cooking dinner together and laughing until our sides hurt. Or the morning after a particularly brutal round of online hate, when Ava held my hand and said simply, "We don't owe them an explanation." Those words carried me through darker days, reminding me that love isn't defined by others' opinions. There were also bigger victories, moments that solidified our bond. When Ava surprised me with tickets to Paris for my 47th birthday, I realized she wasn't just invested in our present, she believed in our future. And when I stood beside her during a major pitch meeting, watching her nail every detail with poise and passion, I knew I'd never stop cheering her on. Supporting each other didn't mean ignoring our flaws or pretending everything was perfect. It meant showing up even when things got messy. It meant listening when the other needed to vent, offering reassurance when self-doubt crept in, and celebrating wins, big and small. As a team, through every challenge, we proved that love and ambition can coexist. That doesn't mean it was easy. Some nights, we argued late into the evening, questioning whether we were doing the right thing. Other times, exhaustion set in, leaving us both wondering if the cost of fighting for us was worth it. But every time we reached a breaking point, we chose to take one more step forward, together. Looking back now, I see how far we've come. From those early days of whispered confessions to standing side by side in the spotlight, we've built something real, something enduring. Love isn't about erasing differences or avoiding hardships, it's about embracing them, growing through them, and emerging stronger on the other side. And that's exactly what we did. This journey with Ava has been more than just a story of love or business, it's been a masterclass in personal growth, resilience, and rediscovery. Looking back, I barely recognized the person I was at 46, defeated, invisible, and convinced my best days were behind me. But through this wild, unpredictable ride, I've learned lessons that have reshaped not only my life but also how I see myself and the world around me. When we first met, I was drowning in self-doubt. Every failure felt like proof that I wasn't good enough, that I'd missed my chance to succeed. But working alongside Ava forced me to confront those fears head-on. She believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, pushing me to step out of my comfort zone and embrace challenges I would have otherwise avoided. Slowly, I began to rebuild my confidence, not because I suddenly had all the answers, but because I realized I didn't need them. Confidence isn't about knowing everything, it's about trusting yourself enough to figure things out along the way. One of the biggest lessons I've learned is the power of vulnerability. For so long, I equated vulnerability with weakness, thinking that showing my flaws would make people lose respect for me. But Ava taught me otherwise. The moments when I let my guard down, the times I admitted I was scared, unsure, or overwhelmed, were the moments that brought us closer together. Vulnerability isn't a liability, it's a bridge that connects us to others on a deeper level. It takes courage to be open, but the rewards are worth it. Trust was another hurdle I had to overcome. After years of disappointments, I found it hard to trust anyone, including myself. Could I really rely on someone as young as Ava to understand what I was going through? Would she stick around when things got tough? Over time, her actions answered those questions louder than words ever could. Trust isn't given blindly, it's earned, piece by piece, through consistency and care. Learning to trust again, not just Ava, but also myself, was one of the most transformative parts of this journey. But perhaps the most profound lesson I've taken away is that it's never too late to start over. Society tries to convince us that there's an expiration date on success, happiness, and even love. If you haven't made it by your mid-40s, they say, then what's the point? Well, I'm living proof that second chances exist if you're willing to fight for them. Age doesn't define your potential, and circumstances don't dictate your future. What matters is your willingness to take risks, to believe in yourself even when no one else does, and to keep moving forward despite the odds. To anyone watching this who feels stuck or hopeless, let me tell you something, don't give up. You might feel like you've hit rock bottom, like there's nowhere left to go but down. But sometimes, hitting bottom is exactly what you need to bounce back stronger than ever. Take it from me, I didn't think I had anything left to offer, yet here I am, thriving in ways I never imagined possible. Whether you're 24, 46, or 80, your story isn't over until you decide it is. Embrace every opportunity, no matter how small, and don't be afraid to bet on yourself. Looking back now, I can hardly believe how far I've come since those dark days at 46. Back then, I thought my life was over. I was broken, and completely lost. But meeting Ava changed everything. Not because she magically fixed all my problems, but because she gave me hope. She showed me that it's possible to rise above your circumstances, to find joy in unexpected places, and to create a life filled with purpose and passion. If I hadn't hit rock bottom, I never would have met the person who saved me, not just financially or professionally, but emotionally and spiritually. Ava didn't just pull me out of the darkness, she helped me rediscover the light within myself. And for that, I'll always be grateful. So thank you for joining me on this journey today. Thank you for listening, for sharing in my highs and lows, and for reminding me why telling this story matters. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's this: no matter where you are in life, no matter how far you've fallen, there's always a way forward. Believe in yourself, take the leap, and trust that the right people will show up when you least expect them. Because sometimes, the person who saves you isn't who you picture, but they're exactly who you need. As we wrap up this story, I want to take a moment to reflect on everything we've covered. What started as a tale of desperation, of being 46, broke, and invisible, turned into a journey of hope, resilience, and transformation. My life went from feeling like it was over to becoming richer than I ever imagined, not just financially but emotionally and spiritually. Through meeting Ava, embracing vulnerability, and taking risks I never thought I'd have the courage to take, I discovered that fulfillment isn't about where you start, it's about how far you're willing to go. The message I hope you take away from this is simple yet powerful. No matter how hard things seem right now, there's always a way forward. Life has a funny way of surprising us when we least expect it. When I hit rock bottom, I couldn't see a way out, but looking back now, I realized that darkness was necessary. It forced me to grow, to trust again, and to believe in possibilities I once dismissed as impossible. If my story proves anything, it's that second chances exist if you're brave enough to reach for them. I also want to remind you that you're not alone. Everyone faces struggles, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But those challenges don't define you. It's how you respond to them that shapes your future. Whether you're dealing with financial hardship, heartbreak, or simply feeling stuck, know that you have the power to rewrite your story. You just need to take the first step, even if it feels small or uncertain. Before we part ways, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever faced a moment in life where you thought all was lost, only to find hope when you least expected it? Or maybe you're currently navigating a tough season and need some encouragement. Whatever your story is, share it in the comments below. I read every single one, and I promise you'll find a community here ready to support you. Your voice matters, and your experiences might inspire someone else who needs to hear them. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Creating content like this is truly a labor of love, and knowing it resonates with people makes it all worthwhile. If you enjoyed this video and found value in it, please consider subscribing to the channel. There's so much more to come, stories of triumph, lessons learned, and messages of hope designed to uplift and inspire you. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And finally, as we close this chapter, let me leave you with these words. No matter where you are in life, remember, it's never too late to rewrite your story. Your best days aren't behind you, they're waiting just around the corner. All you have to do is keep moving forward. Until next time, take care, and don't forget to dream big. I came because I realized I've spent my whole life running, from pain, from rejection, from anything that made me feel vulnerable. And then you walked into my life, and suddenly, I couldn't run anymore. You forced me to confront parts of myself I didn't want to face. Parts one still don't want to face sometimes. I paused, meeting her gaze directly. But losing you taught me something I couldn't learn on my own. Love isn't about being perfect. It's about choosing to stay, even when it's hard. Even when it scares you. Emma didn't respond right away. Instead, she reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. Her touch was tentative, almost cautious, but it sent a wave of relief crashing over me. For so long, I'd convinced myself I didn't deserve this, to be forgiven, to be given another chance, but here she was, offering me exactly that. You're not the same person you were before, she said finally, her voice tinged with both sadness and hope. Neither am I. We've both changed, whether we wanted to or not. But if we're going to do this, if we're going to try again, we have to promise each other something. What's that? I asked, my heart pounding in anticipation. That we'll show up, she replied simply. Not just physically, but emotionally. That we won't shut each other out when things get tough. Because they will. They already have. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the point isn't to avoid pain, it's to face it together. Her words struck a chord deep within me, resonating with everything I'd been struggling to articulate. Love wasn't about erasing our flaws or pretending our differences didn't exist. It was about embracing them, working through them, finding beauty in the messiness of it all. Over the next few weeks, we took things slowly, painfully slowly, at times. Every conversation felt like walking on eggshells, every shared laugh laced with an undercurrent of caution. But beneath the surface, something remarkable was happening. We were learning how to trust each other again, not blindly, not recklessly, but with intention. With care. Emma had grown too. She wasn't the same wide-eyed dreamer who'd once approached me in that cafe, eager to share her world without hesitation. Life, and our complicated history, had tempered her optimism, sharpened her edges. Yet she remained fiercely herself, passionate, unapologetic, and endlessly kind. Watching her navigate these new waters alongside me filled me with a sense of awe I hadn't expected. She wasn't just forgiving me, she was teaching me how to forgive myself. For my part, I worked tirelessly to shed the insecurities that had held me back for so long. I stopped obsessing over what others might think of us, stopped letting societal norms dictate the boundaries of our relationship. Instead, I focused on what mattered most, the connection we shared, the way she made me feel seen and valued in ways no one else ever had. One evening, as we strolled through the park near her apartment, Emma stopped abruptly and turned to face me. "Do you remember the first time we met?" she asked, a playful smile tugging at her lips. "Of course I do," I replied, chuckling softly. "You practically commandeered my table at that cafe." She laughed, shaking her head. "And look at us now. Who would have thought we'd end up here?" Here was a bench overlooking the lake, where we sat side by side, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The colors painted across the sky mirrored the emotions swirling inside me, bittersweet, complex, achingly beautiful. "It hasn't been easy," Emma mused after a while, her voice quieter now. "Healing never is. But I wouldn't trade it for anything." "Me neither," I agreed, reaching for her hand. This time, she didn't hesitate to intertwine her fingers with mine. It was a small gesture, but it carried the weight of everything we'd overcome, and everything we hoped to build moving forward. Our journey wasn't perfect. There were days when old fears resurfaced, moments when doubt crept back in like an unwelcome shadow. But instead of pushing each other away, we leaned in. We talked through the hard stuff, cried together when necessary, celebrated the victories, no matter how small. Through it all, one thing became abundantly clear: love conquers all, not because it eliminates challenges, but because it gives you the strength to face them head-on. Together. As we stood on the cusp of a new chapter, I found myself reflecting on how far we'd come. Societal expectations, age gaps, insecurities, they'd all tried to tear us apart. But none of it mattered anymore. What mattered was the bond we'd fought so hard to rebuild, the unconditional acceptance we'd learned to offer each other despite our imperfections. We weren't fixed. Not completely. But we were healing. Growing. Becoming better versions of ourselves, not separately, but together. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to truly believe love doesn't follow rules. It creates its own. Looking back on everything now, it's hard to believe how much has changed, not just in my life, but within me. The journey wasn't linear. There were moments of triumph and setbacks, laughter and tears, hope and heartbreak. It was messy, imperfect, and at times excruciatingly difficult. But isn't that what makes it so real? Love doesn't come wrapped in a neat little package with all the answers spelled out for you. It demands effort, vulnerability, and a willingness to face your deepest fears. If I've learned anything from this experience, it's that self-awareness is one of the most powerful tools we have. For so long, I let fear dictate my choices, fear of rejection, judgment, failure. I convinced myself I was protecting Emma, but in reality, I was protecting me. I didn't want to risk getting hurt or looking foolish or stepping outside the boundaries society had set for relationships like ours. But here's the truth: those boundaries are often arbitrary, shaped by opinions and expectations that don't define us as individuals. Real love transcends those limits. It asks us to see beyond labels and assumptions and embrace something deeper. That brings me to another lesson I'll carry with me forever: the importance of embracing love without judgment. When I first met Emma, I judged her before giving her a chance, judged her age, her energy, her optimism. I assumed she couldn't possibly understand the complexities of adult life, let alone handle the weight of a relationship with someone like me. What I failed to realize was that love doesn't thrive on conditions or qualifications. It thrives on connection, the kind that defies logic and refuses to be boxed in by rules. By pushing Emma away, I wasn't just rejecting her, I was rejecting the possibility of growth, for both of us. And then there's the hardest lesson of all: learning from past mistakes. Mistakes aren't just missteps, they're opportunities to grow, to become better versions of ourselves. Every time I rejected Emma, I thought I was doing the right thing. I told myself it was for her own good, that I was sparing her from pain or disappointment. But in hindsight, I see now that I was the one causing the most damage. My pride, my insecurities, my inability to take a leap of faith, they nearly cost me the best thing that ever happened to me. So if you're watching this and thinking about someone in your own life, someone you pushed away because of fear or insecurity, I urge you to stop and ask yourself, is it worth losing them over? Are you willing to let go of potential happiness because of doubts that may never even come true? Or are you brave enough to take a chance, to open yourself up to the unknown, knowing full well it might break you, but also knowing it could save you? Because here's the thing, love isn't always convenient. It doesn't always make sense. Sometimes, it shows up when you least expect it, in the form of someone younger, older, different, unfamiliar. And yes, loving someone who challenges your preconceived notions can be terrifying. But isn't that what makes it so transformative? Love doesn't exist to keep us comfortable, it exists to push us, stretch us, teach us how to be more than we ever thought possible. Emma and I still have our struggles, of course. We're not perfect, we argue, we stumble, we question whether we're doing this whole love thing right. But every time we hit a roadblock, we remind ourselves why we started down this path in the first place. We remind ourselves that perfection isn't the goal. Growth is. Connection is. Acceptance is. As I sit here reflecting on everything we've been through, I'm filled with gratitude, not just for Emma, but for the lessons she's taught me along the way. She showed me that love isn't about finding someone flawless or fitting into some predetermined mold. It's about realizing that perfection lies in accepting who they are, and who you can be together. Sometimes, love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about realizing that perfection lies in accepting who they are, and who you can be together.